Hi, and welcome to this installment of Frank and Mary here on Nantucket. If you haven't seen the show before, you haven't seen me and my co-host Allison Forsgren. We've been doing these shows now, Allison, like for a long time, but for like a year or something.
Oh, I think it's more than a year.
Like it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful. But we started doing this special edition, the COVID-19 edition of Frank and Mary on Nantucket, because we realized, remember, the show is all about Frank and Mary, my friends Frank and Mary, whose goal in life is to live in their house until they die and be buried in the backyard. And if that's on Nantucket, that means they don't want to leave, right? Except that now they're like stuck in the house all the time, which is the last thing they wanted. And so the question is, how do they endure? And so Allison typically finds these great guests from Nantucket because I'm new, right? But today we actually have a guest that we both know, and who I think I might have even introduced this guest to you, Allison.
You did.
I think. So why don't we talk a little bit about our guest, and we can introduce her, and then we can talk a little bit about folks who have got loved ones who have got memory problems and kind of what to do.
Also, our guest today is Tammy Pozerycki. She came to the Elder Expo that was held at the high school, I think, 2 years ago, and she came and we did a Frank and Mary right there from the Elder Expo, and Tammy was talking to us about a memory cafe, you started the first memory cafe in Massachusetts, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. And so we wanted to bring her in, and it was a very well-received show. So Tammy, say hello to our audience.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to at least provide some information, education, and support services.
Great. Well, so since we had you to Nantucket, we have been diligently working to get a memory cafe started. And just prior to the COVID-19 situation, we had our first memory cafe meeting. Taylor Hiltz, who is our human services person for the town of Nantucket, the former Our Island Home Activities Director, started it, publicized it, posters. It was going to be held at the Community Music Center, which is a beautiful building. And after our very first meeting, we had to stop. So I'm wondering what you're doing with your memory cafe and how you're helping the people who come to you for ideas about what to do.
So right now I am not facilitating a memory cafe. When I sold my day program, someone took it over. So it's still happening, but so what has happened is, of course, no one can gather together. So these memory cafes have gone virtual. And this has been an unbelievable opportunity for people to connect with people all over the world. I will provide the link to where you can find out virtual memory cafes happening in Massachusetts. They are happening in other states, and I know of a family who they're from a different country and speak a different language, and they've been able to join a memory cafe in their own country virtually. So it's kind of been a cool opportunity. Certainly not the same as being in person. And so I'm glad that at least something's continuing with the memory cafes, and of course can't wait for these programs to start again.
But you also work with people in a facility who have dementia or Alzheimer's, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I consult and I educate, and I'm really right now, my calendar was full in 2020 of speaking engagements and staff education and conferences, and everything came to a halt. So my services of training and consulting have been limited to being only virtually. So right now, because I have a lot of time on my hands, because these healthcare organizations certainly have their priorities of keeping people healthy during this time, that I'm trying to help caregivers themselves living in the community who are living and caring for their loved one with dementia. Now they're 24/7. There's limited access to home care. The adult day programs have closed. So the burden is really right now on that one person who lives with them at home. And I want to provide them what I feel would be helpful information for them to get through the day.
And I know what we were just, I was talking to Tammy a while ago, and we were talking about, kind of how do you really become a professional working with folks who have got dementia? And the answer is by doing it like 1,000 times, right, with a whole bunch of people. And so Tammy, who had not only started the first Memory Cafe, also had a day program that had operated in Marlborough for a number of years until she actually sold it to another group, a nonprofit. And actually, I'm on the board of the new nonprofit. Actually, it's called A Better Day Cafe, which had happened not that many months before COVID-19 kicked in. But then one of the things that Tammy has been offering to people since then has been that kind of connection to help folks who are dealing with folks with dementia try to deal with all of these issues. So I thought it would be interesting to be having Tammy, because once again, Allison, I know from coming out to Nantucket, you've really been at the forefront of trying to find or help develop these programs. You've really pushed for the Memory Cafe. I know we've talked about. And I remember Joe Aguirre talking about the notion of there being ultimately a day program for folks who are on Nantucket, so that someone who has a loved one who's got memory issues can have a place for them to go during the day. But none of that has happened yet. So really, on Nantucket, you're really stuck. You're really stuck when you're at home.
So I actually know a number of people living at home with their families living at home right now that are by themselves, basically, with few resources. And I think Tammy's suggestions as to what they can do within their own homes would be really a valuable thing to share. So Tammy, how do you work this?
So my recommendations have always sort of remained the same for an individual during the day, because the structure and routine of the day are so important to that person living with dementia. And now it should be important to the care partner, because what we do see with people living with dementia, right now, there's so much fear, anxiety, depression from the isolation. One recommendation I do have is turn off the news. We don't need to be exposed to all the negativity that's out there in our government right now, that's out there for the numbers of people dying, what's happening in our nursing homes. Just all that negativity is going to set us up to not be in a good place. And when a loved one living with dementia sees you as the care partner as stressed, worried, and depressed yourself, they're going to mirror that. So we have to start to build resilience for ourselves as care partners, in that we have to focus on our own self-care. We have to sort of make sure that how do we develop a day that has positive engagement, that has maybe some self-care mixed in, and then also not trying to do this all alone. And what I recommend is that, first of all, home care agencies are still out there. They're still providing some services, very limited. There are some agencies still out there, and I'm not sure what the situation is on Nantucket for home care providers, but I know companies in our area that are educated on the COVID. They have personal protective equipment. They are very well educated on how to care for someone during this time. There's a lot of fear out there of people allowing others to come in their home. And I think that's one thing. So what I would recommend to that, if that is the barrier, that they reach out to family, friends, neighbors who have also been socially isolating themselves and have some personal protective equipment like a mask that can come in and just allow 2 hours, 3 hours for the care partner to go for a drive, go for a walk, get online with a friend, have lunch with a friend over Zoom, and the other issue too is the virtual world. Are these care partners able to utilize the world of virtual online support, online memory cafes, online offerings, like there's museum tours, there's aquarium tours, there's such an abundance of resources online. But what if they don't have a computer? What if the person living with dementia is completely unable to engage in something that's on a screen? So my recommendation is to really start to write down things that your loved one is capable of doing, that they like to do, what are their abilities, interests, talents, and get outside. Getting outside and getting physical exercise is my number one recommendation. Nature is going to help both of you, getting the sun on your face, fresh air, seeing some beautiful things in our nature. And of course, are you able to go out for a walk, staying safely, social distancing? Those are important, but it's very, very important to get out. So in that, are they waking around the same time, having their breakfast around the same time? Are they showering and dressing the same time of day? We have to look at preferences. What does that individual like? What is their routine like based on when they like to get up? Not good to let that individual sleep throughout the day. Not good to let that individual go to bed in the afternoon for a long nap. That's just asking for problems during sundowning hours. When we see a heightened behavioral symptoms, lots of, a person asking for their mom, asking to go home. These are signs that the person's in fear and insecure, and how is we as the care partner going to handle it? Family recommendations. Allow your loved one to be in a recliner chair or couch in the afternoon for about 30, 40 minutes to just get some rest. That will give them a rejuvenation for the later part of the day, because by that time of day, they're pretty fatigued if you've had them up. Have them participate in household chores. There's so much around our house that can be an activity. I
think one of the things that I've noticed about so much of the work that you've done, and the advantage that you have having had a day program that was working with nothing but folks with memory issues for a number of years, is I remember going there and you had turned very normal kind of day-to-day activities, right, or the things that you do, into real activities, but whether it was setting the table or fixing the dishes, and which was really a wonderful thing. So the folks were there from 9 in the morning until often 4 in the afternoon. But it was, and the things that you were doing were similar and often, right? But everybody felt engaged, and that's why I was interested in one of the things that you had mentioned when you talk about the structure of a day, right? When you're talking to folks, could you just talk for a second about how a day might look?
Sure.
If a caregiver who is, once again, is really stuck at home now and dealing with, who knows how long of needing to deal with these issues, what would a day look like?
I think first, the care partner has to sort of take into consideration what the loved one likes to do. What are their preferences? What are their interests? What makes them think, and also to think about the things that do make them anxious and make them fearful, and try to prevent those things from happening. But also, what time does the person like to wake up? not allowing them to sleep until 11 o'clock. I'm just saying, you know, what's wrong with 9 as opposed to 8, if that's what they prefer. Breakfast, getting them dressed, getting ready. No one should be in their pajamas all day long. We have to treat each day like it's a new day and have a purpose. Physical exercise in the morning, some form, whether it's following online programs, whether it's getting out and walking, stretching, chair exercises, and then cognitive exercises. Can you do word puzzles? Can you do trivia? Can you do puzzles? And again, when you think of these type of activities, if you're able to do a 1,000-piece puzzle, maybe your loved one can only do 25 piece. And so keeping in mind what you can set up for your loved one to have success with. Lunch around the same time of day, that quiet time around the same time of day, maybe doing household chores, gardening. I encourage planting herbs because they have such a wonderful sensory opportunity for smells, flowers, deadheading plants, watering. This is throughout the afternoon. A little more exercise in the afternoon. I think physical exercise twice a day if you can do it. And then dinner around the same time, bed around the same time. If things if that person's getting very anxious and upset, a wonderful thing is to introduce some music therapy and some comfort for that person, whether it's certain type of music, whether it's a certain blanket, a stuffed animal. And if maintaining that, try to keep to the circadian rhythm where you're meant to sleep at night and be up and engaged during the day. And it's going to help both of you. One thing I will recommend is, as a care partner, you have to lower your expectations. Maybe the laundry isn't going to be folded like you wanted. Maybe the vacuuming isn't done to what your standards are. Don't argue. Don't criticize. It's okay for things not to be perfect, and allow that person to be part of the day, to have a purpose throughout the day.
That's a challenge. That's a real challenge.
It is.
Allison, you're dealing with folks, folks around the island who are trying to deal with some of these issues. Are there particular things that you've found that people are really, really upset, concerned about right now? I know one of the things, I was on island. I was out there yesterday on a beautiful day, and we were talking before the show about this, the strangeness of it all, that you're walking around downtown on a beautiful day and like no one's there, which I would think must be really disorienting for folks who were there, who grew up there and who are dealing with these issues now.
I think that a lot of people's routines have changed drastically, and that's not a good thing for people who are caregiving people with memory problems. So where they might have used to sat downtown on a bench and watch the world go by, that's no longer a possibility. And we had amassed a pretty good group of people who we knew were needing or were looking for some support. And I feel bad that there's nothing that we can offer at this point in time. So, any resources that Tammy can share as far as links, we can put links up on this show. But I'm concerned about people who I know are living with only caregivers, for instance. I don't think that there are a lot of caregivers working right now. I know for a fact that family has had to come in to take over the job, and those people don't really have a lot of background as to what to do. So I love Tammy's suggestions about following routines and plans, and any other help that perhaps someone who's not who has very little background in caregiving can do, even when it comes to language or how to deal with escalating behaviors and stuff. I think that would be helpful for people who don't have a background in this, really.
So Tammy, can you kind of, and certainly we'd really like you to be, sending to our friends here at Nantucket Cable who are great about this, any kind of links or information like that. Can you kind of speak to that? I know you've spoke about, among other things, some very basic stuff like the 24-hour hotline that the Alzheimer's Association has. And I think regarding some of the things that you were just talking about, I think you would also refer to a music, I can't remember if there was a website. It was
yeah. Yeah.
So if you could just kind of speak to in general, kind of where people could find things, because as Allison says, there aren't a lot of those kinds of resources on island right now. There are limited home care. Home care is an issue because caregivers are nervous about, third-party caregivers are nervous about going, and families are nervous about having third parties in, So can you talk to those things?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it'll be nice for me to get those links to Allison and the cable so that they can put them up. But again, maybe the person living on Nantucket doesn't have a computer or can't get to those links. Maybe family can help them. Or maybe that's where, it might be helpful for this Allison finding people that can help them navigate to get the tools they need, like eldersong.com. They have a slew of trivia books and music and DVDs and, ideas. And this is when the care partner needs to sort of make that toolbox of ideas and regiment the day, because if you don't have a plan, that's when the person starts to get bored, they start to get agitated, they want to leave the house. Specifically, the support and education, I think, like Allison hit it right, that the family caregivers even, they're not educated on the disease process. So I am sure what's happening is causing a lot of negative consequences, like reality orienting, arguing with the person, correcting the person, criticize, and no fault of their own. They're just not educated in the communication with their loved one. Like, how do I de-escalate when I know this person's going to get up to the point where they're going to get physical?
Right. Right.
So those are the things that, and individually and for the care partner and for the family, that's what I'm offering people right now, is one of the services, and they can call me and we can discuss cost and because I don't put a price out there because every individual's different. It might be something simple I can do with one phone call, or it may be a series of sessions.
So could you, as Allison has suggested, could you really try to provide that information to the cable regarding the kind of the resources that people can look for? And specifically, can you give folks now that number? There's the Alzheimer's, the 24-hour hotline number, right?
Yes, that's 1-800-272-3900. And I'll also get that to her. I think the issue is too, and I spoke about this before, that, the 1-800 number for the Alzheimer's Association is for anything. You could have one question, you could need resources, you could need support, whatever you need, call them. Remember something, that it can be very scary if you have a loved one with dementia that gets into a place where they're having a catastrophic reaction and they're becoming physical. Remember to keep yourself safe. And if you have to call 911 to do that.
I've actually tried I called the Alzheimer's hotline with a couple of questions and was so impressed with the answers, with the responses. And I think people are hesitant to even claim that Alzheimer's is what they're calling about, but it could be about a dementia. It could be about a question about their memory. I mean, you don't have to be a diagnosed Alzheimer's patient to get help from the helpline. It's a resource for caregivers, like what to do in a situation. So I know that there are a lot of those cards floating around Nantucket, and I don't think people really take advantage of using that resource. And it's 24 hours a day. People who are, I think it's a good time to try it if you haven't.
Yeah.
Yes, I think a lot of times it's just that people find it hard to believe. They find it hard to believe the quality of the information they get. They figure that it's some kind of a come on for something, right? And it's Alzheimer's Association. It's a good cause, right? It's a good reason to be supporting the Alzheimer's Association because they provide all that stuff for free. It's wonderful, it's just wonderful. Well, listen, Allison, thank you very much for when we talked about having Tammy, be our guest here today. And Tammy, thank you very much for coming on. I think for a lot of folks who are dealing with this, hopefully this has provided some new information for them and some new links for them, right? I think this is a difficult time for all of us, right? But and I want to say, especially for folks who have got folks dealing with dementia, everybody's got their own troubles, but this is a hard time if you're kind of confused anyway, right?
I'm curious to check out the virtual memory cafes, and I'll talk to Taylor to see if we can reach out to some people and share that information, because again, we had just amassed a list of contacts and stuff. So I would love to share that. And Tammy, thank you very much. Thank you so much for joining us again. We need more people like you.
Oh, thank you. And thanks for having me, and good luck on the island. Stay well.
We need more people like you. That's a good way to summarize it. Thank you very much, Tammy. Thank you, Allison. We need more people like you too. And thank you very much for watching us today. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next installment of Frank and Mary here on Nantucket. Thank you.